Introduction. For most of human history, trade was never truly free. Wherever goods moved, rulers followed, with laws, taxes, monopolies, and punishments. These regulations were designed to control wealth and power, but they produced an unintended consequence that reshaped global history: smuggling. Smuggling did not begin as criminal rebellion. It was born as survival, resistance, and adaptation. Whenever trade regulations became unjust, unrealistic, or exploitative, people simply found ways around them. From ancient empires to colonial powers, the underground economy often grew stronger than the legal one. This is the real history of how old trade regulations created smugglers and how smugglers quietly changed the world. 1. Trade control in the ancient world. The earliest civilizations understood that controlling trade meant controlling wealth. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets from around 3000 BCE record state-regulated prices for grain, wool, and metals. Merchants required official seals, licenses, and approval from temples or palaces. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, the pharaoh claimed ownership over key resources like gold, papyrus, and grain. Trade routes along the Nile were monitored, and unauthorized exchange could lead to confiscation or forced labor. However, strict controls created predictable problems. Prices were artificially high, supply shortages were common, officials abused power for personal gain. Merchants quickly learned that illegal trade routes, bribes, and nighttime river crossings were safer and more profitable than legal trade. Smuggling emerged not as crime, but as economic realism. 2. Salt laws, the world's most smuggled commodity. No product illustrates the birth of smuggling better than salt. Salt was essential for food preservation and survival. Because of its importance, governments monopolized it relentlessly. China. As early as the 7th century BCE, Chinese dynasties imposed a state monopoly on salt. The price was fixed far above production cost, funding armies and imperial courts. Smuggling exploded along river systems, with entire villages participating in illegal salt distribution. Despite brutal punishments, branding, imprisonment, execution, smuggling never stopped. In fact, salt smugglers became folk heroes, seen as enemies of corruption rather than criminals. Roman Empire. Rome taxed salt heavily, giving rise to the word salary, from salarium, salt payment. Illegal salt trade thrived along coastlines, where fishermen secretly evaporated seawater to avoid imperial taxes. British India. Under British colonial rule, Indians were forbidden from producing salt independently. The law criminalized an everyday necessity. This directly led to Gandhi's Salt March, 1930, one of the most famous acts of civil disobedience in history. Salt smuggling proved a powerful truth. When governments tax survival, people resist. 3. Medieval Europe. Guilds, tariffs, and black markets. In medieval Europe, trade regulations were enforced by guild monopolies, city tariffs, and royal charters. Guilds controlled who could produce and sell goods, fixing prices and excluding outsiders. While designed to ensure quality, guilds often became corrupt, stifling competition. As a result, independent artisans sold goods secretly, rural traders bypassed city gates, smugglers used forests and rivers as hidden highways. England's wool trade is a prime example. Wool exports were tightly controlled by the crown because they generated massive revenue. Smuggling wool to Flanders became so common that entire coastal communities depended on it. Ironically, many local officials participated in smuggling while enforcing laws against it. 4. Islamic empires and smuggling across deserts and seas. Islamic empires generally supported trade, but regulations still existed, especially on luxury goods like silk, spices, and precious metals. The Abbasid Caliphate taxed long-distance trade routes heavily. Smugglers adapted by creating unofficial caravan routes, trading at night, using coded language and false cargo labels. Across the Indian Ocean, Arab and Swahili traders bypassed imperial ports to avoid duties imposed by rulers. Smuggling here was less violent and more cooperative, relying on trust networks and shared religion. This period shows that smuggling was not always criminal chaos. It was often highly organized commerce outside the state. 5. Age of Exploration. Smuggling goes global. The 16th to 18th centuries marked a turning point. European empires introduced mercantilism, a system where colonies existed solely to enrich the mother country. Key rules included colonies could trade only with the ruling empire, certain goods could not be manufactured locally, prices were fixed unfairly. Spanish Empire. Spain tightly controlled silver from the Americas. Smugglers, often English, Dutch, or French, intercepted ships or traded secretly with colonists desperate for cheaper goods. British Empire. British Navigation Acts restricted colonial trade to British ships and ports. American colonists smuggled molasses, tea, and textiles. Smuggling became so widespread that many colonial merchants were technically criminals. John Hancock, a future American revolutionary leader, was a notorious smuggler. Trade regulations did not stop commerce. They turned entire populations against imperial authority. 6. Tea, opium, and the economics of addiction. Some of history's most destructive conflicts emerged directly from trade regulations. Tea smuggling. In 18th century Britain, tea was taxed so heavily that up to 2/3 of all tea consumed was smuggled. Armed gangs controlled coastal trade, bribing officials and intimidating rivals. Opium trade. China banned opium imports due to social collapse caused by addiction. British traders smuggled opium anyway to balance trade deficits. When China tried to enforce its laws, Britain launched the Opium Wars. This marks a grim reality. Smuggling wasn't always resistance, it was sometimes enforced by empires themselves. 7. Smuggling as a shadow economy. By the modern era, smuggling had become a permanent feature of global trade. Common patterns emerged. High taxes equals high smuggling. Monopolies equal black markets. Prohibition equals organized crime. Smuggling funded rebellions, pirate states, criminal syndicates. Yet it also supplied affordable goods, sustained border communities, undermined unjust laws. In many regions, smugglers were respected more than tax collectors. 8. Why trade regulations keep creating smugglers. History shows a consistent cycle. Authority restricts trade, prices rise, supply falls, smuggling fills the gap. No empire, Roman, Chinese, Ottoman, British, ever fully defeated smuggling. The reason is simple. Economic need always finds a path. Trade regulations often assumed obedience, but people chose practicality. Conclusion: smugglers as unofficial historians. Old trade regulations unintentionally created new routes, new networks, new identities. Smugglers mapped coastlines, deserts, and borders long before governments understood them. They exposed the weaknesses of empires and revealed the limits of control. While history books celebrate kings, laws, and treaties, the real movement of goods and ideas often happened in the shadows. Smuggling was not a side effect of history. It was one of its driving forces.